Well, hello there. Welcome to the commentary for It's a Meaningful Life.
I'm Mike Nawrocki, the voice of Larry the Cucumber and one of the writers on It's a Meaningful Life.
And I'm Brian Roberts, the director of the show. And I got listed as a producer this time, too, which was fun.
That's fancy.
That's never happened before.
How's it feel to be a producer?
There was nobody else to put in as producer.
Did you get to yell at people?
No, I don't yell at people. I'm more of the passive-aggressive type. So, hey.
Passive-aggressive-ooser.
Enough about me.
That should be a good title, passive-aggressive-ooser.
We're so excited you guys are joining us for a walk through this show with us today. And this part is the opening. You've probably seen it before.
It's still could be new to people if they haven't seen it. It's only been around. This particular opening's only been around for about 3 shows now.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a good one. We were just talking before we started recording about how I kind of miss seeing the old clips of the old shows in there because they don't really stand up against the new clips.
It's my theory is people have better memories of the actual animation of the original VeggieTales, and if you remind them what the actual animation really looked like,
they'll go
like, "Ooh, that didn't look too good."
I still think they looked great, especially because they were so cutting edge.
Yeah.
So this countertop was fun, although when we were talking about the countertop setup for this show, one idea we had was to show what VeggieTales would have been without Larry, which we were going to do at the end of the show. And sadly, that never happened because we ran out of time, which was too bad. But we still get a little bit of that idea here when Bob starts telling Larry that he messes everything up, and then Larry kind of won't respond to Bob. How did you feel when you were recording this, Mike?
Oh, I remember just hoping that Bob didn't sound too mean. It's like, oh, that Bob, he sounded like a jerk. But yeah, Phil actually delivered it really nicely, so it feels very innocent, like he didn't mean to hurt Larry's feelings.
Yeah, Bob did go through a period where I remember when Phil would start to record Bob on the countertop. This was 5 or 6 shows ago. He would start out like at 9 in frustration and anger, and then within 10 seconds he was at 10. And it was like, whoa, hold on. Okay, let's start at 2 or 3, and then we can get to 10 by the time he's actually supposed to be upset. Because Bob always ends up upset on the countertop for one reason or another.
That Larry can be very frustrating.
Yes,
Take it from me, I know.
He's so sweet. There's the cricket. Oh, it's cute. I made that cricket.
I didn't see a cricket there. Is there going to be a cricket there in the final?
There is a cricket.
Okay.
It's just not in this version.
I'll take your word for it.
See, now you're getting into like production pipeline and people realizing that we record these before the show's finished. Actually, we haven't even.
I see the little girl. She's so cute.
We haven't even written the show yet.
That's Todd's little girl, Todd with 1 D.
Todd Carter, he's our story supervisor.
He's awesome.
You'll recognize from the credits from, like 11 years now he's been working on VeggieTales.
Yep.
We love Todd. And we love his daughter now, too, because she's adorable.
Yeah, she did a great job.
She really did. So this is
I noticed you've gone full screen with the video mail, which is nice.
Let's not talk about that.
I like that idea.
That was a mistake.
Well, actually, because you can do that now with instant messaging and iChat. You can actually go to full screen, so that is kind of nice. I kept it in the box for the first 2 shows, so
yeah, it was supposed to be in the box, but that just didn't happen.
That's not bad. It looks nice.
So here we have our first shots of Rockwell, which you'll notice is suspiciously like the town in St. Nicholas, but we mixed it up a bit though.
Working on another Easter show, or an Easter show for next time where it is very suspiciously like it's you. Although I think they all base themselves off of Franklin, Tennessee,
Exactly.
which is where we're
why they all look similar.
That's right. We don't get out much.
So we're into the story now, and kind of from the very beginning, I think, as we first said, hey, we want to tell a story about Larry the Cucumber, learning that as a character, this character Stuart, learning that his life has meaning, and kind of very very early on, we said, well, let's set it at Christmas and fall, so it would be kind of autumnal first and then Christmassy. And then out of that came the idea, well, if it's autumn, then it's football season. And so the football element of the show kind of came out of the tone we wanted, which was this autumnal tone.
Good job, too, directing a football sequence, not knowing anything about football yourself.
Yeah, that was funny. the early draft of this scene, written by Mark Steele, Mike's co-writer on this show, there just were no specifics about anything football-y, and so we boarded it with nothing specific football-y happening, and it just was kind of people lined up throwing a ball around. And Mike, you want to talk about your football background, Mike?
I used to be a backup quarterback on a Bible college football team. Thank you very much. That was big time.
I played football one day when I was 9, and then my dad heard the coach say some things he didn't like, and he wouldn't let me go back the next day. So that was the end of my football
You got the
career.
bones for it, though. You could be
I
a
do
you could be
have
a
the
football.
bones for it.
Yeah. So, but I played second string quarterback. I got to play in a few games, by the way, too. Had actually 2 touchdown passes. I'm very proud to say.
Wow.
So, and I was a holder too, so I held for the kicker.
So
good
when
friend
you
Eric.
took a whack at the scene, you added a lot of the specificity of who did what, and there was this person called a quarterback who, I guess, what did they do? They throw the ball?
Yeah,
or do they catch
throw
it?
the ball. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and there's receivers and whatnot.
And like telephone receivers. So that was a nice change when we got to be a little
Brian
more
watches the
specific.
Super Bowl for the commercials.
I watched the Oscars for the commercials too. Anyway, so now we're in General Hospital here.
It does look very General Hospital-y.
Yes,
It has that nice little fluorescent glow to it.
it does. So the dad, this was interesting. For a long time, the dad was going to be Pa Grape, and it was kind of like the day before you recorded Phil, or maybe the day we recorded Phil.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, by the way, Mike, the dad's going to be Nezer again, because at the very beginning it was Nezer, and then I changed it to Pa Grape. And I'm very glad that we did that, because even though it turns out Nezer doesn't have a really big part in the show, I love this scene. I just think he's so charming.
Yeah.
And so he's got kind of the eccentricity that he had as Warren Muffet
Right.
from Minnesota Cuke.
I think it's the hairdo that does it for him, and the bushy mustache.
Yeah. He Nezer's really changed as a character. We're using him more in this kind of eccentric, wacky old guy role as opposed to, the villain that he certainly started out as.
Yeah.
And that's why we ended up creating Gustav for St. Nicholas, was because that really would have been a Nezer part years ago, but he was so mean, it didn't feel right to put Nezer back into that big of a villain role.
Do you remember his turnaround in Rack Shack and Benny? I was actually watching that the other day. I was fishing through for some
How quickly
audio
it
lines.
happens?
Yeah. I'm going to throw you in the fiery furnace.
Oh, hey,
and then
come
they sing
out
a
of there.
song. Hey, I was wrong. Will you forgive me?
It was the same in Toy That Saved Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
All they had to do was give him, like a teddy bear. And he was like, I'm going to get rid of you. Oh, actually, never mind.
He's a quick repenter.
He is.
That's a good character trait to have.
Character trait. So
Insta repent.
there we see the idea that Morty Bumble is becoming this famous football player because he caught the ball instead of Stewart, which of course plays in. So here, in this show, when I talk to my kids about the shows I'm making, they always want to know who's going to make trouble, because I'm teaching them about story and teaching them about villains, because they usually don't like the villains, and so I describe the villains as people who make trouble. So whenever I'm telling them about a new show, they're like, "And who makes trouble, Daddy?" Like, what do they do? How do they make trouble? And so in this show, the villain is Morty Bumble, but he really turns out to be more of a kind of a misdirected egomaniac than a true villain. But I'm really pleased with where he ended up character-wise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Stewart here is he kind of does the bad stuff to himself too, so he gets
Right, he does.
yeah, even though he's a hero.
That was an interesting moment in development when I realized that this isn't Larry in this show, it's Stewart. Because there was a part where I was pitching a scene where Petunia was talking to Larry about all the mistakes he'd made, I was playing him more as kind of a bumbler, and more of an incompetent.
You're right.
And so Petunia was talking to him about all these things he'd done that were so incompetent over the years, in a gentle way. And I got this reaction of like, she's like his mother. You're making him seem like a child. And I was like, it's Larry the Cucumber. He is a child. But in this show, he's not Larry. He is Stuart Green. And I think really kind of becomes a different kind of...
Yeah, I think Married with a Family, he's got to kind of have a little bit of a grown-up attitude.
Yeah.
But still, Larry at heart.
But he's still charming, I think. It comes across really well. This scene is fun. Now, this scene does not have any specific football action. It's just kind of
I didn't
people
really
running
touch this
around
one.
with the ball. At one point, you wanted to make it into a real
Oh,
game,
real scrimmage, yeah.
a real scrimmage game.
yeah,
And then I
going
was
to-
like, well, then we have to have twice as many characters.
Yeah, yeah. That was
So
a
let's
good
just
call.
have them practicing.
against each other. That's a good one.
Yeah. Here's Percy. I love Percy P.
Yeah. That's a nice little backgrounds. Joe Spotterford specials.
They are actually, those are from Minnesota Cuke.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At least the hills are. I took
Yeah.
the hills from Minnesota Cuke and
Okay.
put them on a new sky.
Now, are those... so some of those are 3D trees and some of those are painted
There's
backgrounds?
a handful of 3D
Yeah.
trees. Not as many as I would have preferred, but you
Yeah.
know, it still does hold. It holds up. It
Yeah.
looks nice. Now this song. Let's talk about this song because I love this song. We had a different song here at one point that was very specific about the lesson of the show, and I felt, as kind of we all did, that it was kind of too specific, and it was making Stuart feel like, well, if he already knows the lesson of the show, then what does he have to learn?
Right.
And so we said, well, let's put just kind of a sports song here. And you went off. How quickly did you write it? It was
Well, I
It's a
think it
pretty
was
painless
a
one,
day or
wasn't
two. Yeah. So.
and so yeah, a day or two later, you came back with, "Hey, listen to this," and it was like, "That's perfect." It was because it's so funny and so charming, and
Oh, thank you.
and
Yeah, there's just so
sports
many.
humor.
There's just so many sports cliches. You know, it's fun to string them all together in one song.
yeah. So and this, you know, of course, with the marching band, it just was fantastic.
It kind of feels
Kirk
like
did a great job.
what's the Music Man song?
110 trombones.
110 trombones. Kind of has that kind of flavor to it. Which is-
Exactly.
kind of feels appropriate too
Mm-hmm.
for this type of movie.
Morty Bumble, the bumblebee? Where?
I'm Jim Gordley for Wide
I
World
love
of
the way that
Spores,
the
and I'm here
Wide
with
World of
Rick
Spores
Rude,
set
one of the
looks
biggest
It looks great with their colors. It's really nice.
beautiful blue.
Bumblebee. Marty
So
It looks.
What?
With him blocking it, it looks like
Wide World of
sores.
Pores? Oh,
Sores.
Wide World of Spores.
And now it's pores. Look at that. Wide world. Wow. That's just not right.
Here we're coming up to the Munchie Dream commercial now, which was animated by our crew in Hawaii. T. Dan Hofstede, who was our animation supervisor there, who normally does 3D animation now, but used to do 2D animation. Supervised a couple of his team members to create this wonderful little commercial. I was going to do it myself, but ran out of time. So I'm not good at time
Pesky thing
management.
called time.
Yeah. So late in production, we went to them and said, "Hey, T-Dan, you can draw, right?"
That's great.
And he's
That's
like,
nice.
"I used to work at Disney, so yeah."
So,
But I love how it turned out. They did a fantastic job on it.
Is that an ice cream sandwich he's got in front of him, or is that his stack of...
It's a stack of papers.
Rockwell's son is coming home.
So that's kind of a big moment for Stuart there when he realizes that Morty's coming home. Because, I mean, we can talk, I think, a little bit about how what was a challenge in this show is that Stuart's journey, his heroic journey, was largely internal. You know, he's not battling an external force. He's battling an internal kind of disposition.
Right.
And Morty is the manifestation of that, but he's not actually battling Morty. But since Morty's the manifestation of that, by him coming back to Rockwell, it brings up these feelings for Stuart about, golly, if things had turned out differently, if I'd caught that football. That's up until that point in the show, we don't really see Stuart's issues from the hospital are still bothering him.
Right. Hey, this that little conversation that she was having on the phone, didn't you tell me that came from your wife Catherine when she was teaching?
Yes, my wife was a first grade teacher, and she had a parent at one time at one school. Let's not be too specific. Here, who was concerned that that in first grade my wife wasn't doing enough to prepare their child for the SATs. And so that's kind of always stuck with me as a really funny thing to say to a first grade teacher.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And it felt like it fit here with the the themes of wanting the best for your life and for your children's lives and all
Right,
that.
right.
However, I think it is possible to go too far in that.
Now this is the voice of Stevie Joy.
Stevie Joy Rue Chapman. That's right.
She's such a cutie pie.
She did so great. I'll admit to just us small group of friends here, Mike and I, and whoever's listening to this, that I was really nervous about it because we didn't audition her, and we really had no idea whether she could do it or not.
Well, part of it was, Stephen had said, oh, she's so outgoing and she's done this sort of thing before. So we're like, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
we
Which is great, but then you still would like to audition someone.
Yeah.
But and actually, it was very late in the pre-production process. We were already animating some scenes, and we'd had a hard time scheduling her, and so we finally got her into the studio, and of course, I was very concerned about it. Just concerned in that it's always hard working with children to get an honest performance out of them, and this part required an honest performance.
Right.
And so she came in, and I sat in the booth with her, and she just did a fantastic job, both with the speaking and the singing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the final result is just adorable.
Yeah.
At one point, I needed to get her to laugh, and I wanted her to really laugh because I didn't want it to be fake. And I was trying to tell her some jokes, but I'm not really good at telling jokes, and so I couldn't get her to laugh at my jokes.
Yes.
And so Stephen was
these
sitting.
Two chipmunks walk into a. I don't know what a
two guys walk into a bar. You'd think the second one would have ducked. She didn't get my jokes. So.
Hey, wait! I'm just getting your joke. That was funny.
So like Stephen Curtis Chapman was there in the other room while I was recording her. And so at one point, I'm like, okay, I can't get her to laugh. What do I do? And so I looked over at him, through the microphone. He was on the other side of this glass, and I said, "May I have permission to tickle her?"
Yeah, I usually invite the parents themselves in to do the tickling.
Yeah, I didn't. I asked permission at least. And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, go ahead." And so that's how we got the authentic laughter out of her.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I always do to my own kids whenever they're doing little VOs. I need laughter. It's like, all right, time to get tickled.
It sounds authentic. Oh, here's her little song. She did so good. The scene looks beautiful too, with the stars in the sky or on the ceiling.
That brings back a lot of memories because when my kids were little, we had those, star lamps, that rotated with the little stars on the ceiling. And it just brings back fond memories.
Really looks great. This was probably the last scene to get finished on the show, so I was a little nervous about it. Like, oh, I hope it looks good, and it does. We should probably say something.
Do-do-do, do-do-do.
Those boys' mouths are supposed to be moving. They're not.
Oh. Well, they're ventrilla pickles.
Ventrilla pickles. Yeah.
Do-do-do-do-do-do. You know what? I can do without moving my mouth.
Oh, good.
It's a good skill.
There's a little continuity error back there.
That must be one of those Posturepedic foam mattresses where you can jump and it doesn't really move anything else.
You drop a bowling ball and not disturb your partner.
Yeah, for people who want
What
to
are
put
you
a
doing with
glass of
bowling
water
balls
on
in
their bed.
Glasses of wine. There's Mrs. Josephson. That was Carrie Pisapia did that voice for her.
Oh, who's also the voice of Ellen.
Also the voice of Ellen.
Yeah.
Or Linda.
Linda
Dulce.
that's right. Yeah, Linda Dulce.
Which
Sweet
in
Linda.
Spanish means
Beautiful,
sweet.
Yeah, beautiful, sweet. Yeah.
It's the unflattering hats are hilarious. That's something that Mark Steele came up with.
Yeah.
Just showing kind of the reach of Bumble Enterprises. That just put his name on it and it sells silly looking hats.
Yep.
Here's the magical remote-controlled helicopter. It's one of
With
those
no
things,
pilot?
Like, yeah, it has no. Watch, there's no pilot until the end. Like, it's darker now, so it's harder to see inside. But at one point, that bubble was completely transparent,
Yeah.
and so it's like, oh, well, who's flying it?
Well, maybe he flies his own copter.
Well,
Or
no,
you mean he wasn't even
Yeah,
there?
there was nobody in it.
Oh, wow.
So the darkened bubble helps a lot. With
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't notice. I wouldn't have known.
there's a little football team.
Oh, wow. Those are creepy little faces.
They're Morty Bumble masks. Can't you tell?
I've seen that in a horror movie once, I think.
I love Lunt in this kind of a role because it's, you know, he's, as we were talking about villains earlier, he's conceited and he's, you know, maybe overreaches a bit, but he's really entertaining the whole time.
Yeah,
And he never has ill intent.
Right.
So for me,
He just thinks
makes
he's
a really
neat,
fun character.
He
Here.
just thinks he's a neat guy.
He is a neat guy. He's a fun guy.
Yep.
Actually, he's a squash, not a fungus. But the cafe of the day.
That's one big
Maca Chiquito.
Maca Chiquito. Yeah, I remember trying to say that in the
Maki Chakiquito.
Maki Chakiquito. It took me a few times to get through that.
Well, and even then, I don't think we said it right. Mark had a really specific way he wanted it
Yeah, didn't he
said.
have somebody ordered that one time when he was at a Starbucks or something? Is
Somebody
that how
said,
that
I'd
went
like a caramel maca chiquicacato or something like that. It's much like the SAT joke. It stuck with him.
No pun intended.
This is a really fun scene, though, this kind of back and forth between Stuart and Morty.
This town could use me. How's the toy train business? Not what it used to be, eh?
We do just fine.
Not according to this chart.
Where'd you get
Profit.
I made it. Arrows
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
there's the
map.
S.
that? No, I mean, how do you know this stuff?
Oh, you can find out anything if you're rich enough.
Boy, isn't that true.
Guess what I found out?
What?
You're behind on all your
You know, this scene's
Oh,
interesting.
I just thought of something. You want to talk about this? You want to talk about my cold?
Oh, yes.
That'd be a good thing to talk about.
Thank you. Let's
Man,
talk about the
I
cold.
had a terrible cold, and then I lost
My
my voice
goodness.
for probably
It was 4 weeks.
Like 4 weeks. And I remember I was scheduled to record, and I was coming up to it, and I didn't see how I was going to do it. And then Laura Neitsling here said, you know, she used to work in the recording industry. And she said, well, a lot of times when singers will go out on the road, they'll go, and their voice is down, they'll go get steroid shot. You know, it's like, okay,
Right.
let me try that. So I went to the doctor, and sure enough, that was one of the things. And it wasn't a shot. I got pills along with, you know, antihistamines and, you know, antibiotics.
Maybe that's the
and everything.
problem, is that you didn't get a shot.
Yeah, but it was it took me forever. So I tried to recover, and then I remember I did come back and I was able to record, but it was sounded
We
so
recorded
pathetic
you-
and made your eyes water.
I think total, we probably recorded you 5 different times for this show.
Oh man.
And like 2 of them, we recorded all the same stuff.
Yeah, because I did
'Cause
end up
we'd recorded
recording
a
that
big
day.
chunk.
Yeah,
But it turned out to be largely unusable.
yeah.
And I think we got like halfway through the script that day, and we were like, "Yeah, Mike, this just isn't working."
Well, I felt like I was on the edge of doing irreparable damage after
Yeah,
a while
exactly.
there. So
Oh, so that was so hard, you know. But we were up against this hard deadline of we have to send the show to animation,
right.
and they can't animate it if they don't have your voice.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think forget how we worked it out, but like they worked on some other scenes or something like
As soon
that
as we
that
finish
didn't,
our
that
Christmas
didn't need
orders,
your voice.
we'll be
But
just fine.
But I can still kind of tell a little bit when I hear the voice in certain scenes, especially at you know, even though I was getting you know, over the cold
Mm-hmm.
after 3 or 4 weeks, you know, it's still gravelly.
Hotel in Mortyville.
Which is,
but it's not Larry, it's Stuart.
But it's Stuart, yeah, which is the other thing too. And
And
that's
at one point we tried to justify it as that. We said,
Yeah.
well, it's a different character. And
Yeah.
then we listened to what we'd recorded, and it was like, no.
never mind.
It's Larry's husky older uncle.
Larry Boyd, I think it was the Rumor Weed. Yeah, Rumor Weed. I had a bad cold too, and you can go back and hear that in that performance.
That worked well there, though, because Larry Boyd really is a
Yeah, he is more gruff.
gruff and gravelly.
Yeah, yeah.
So here we're coming up on the 110% reprise. This was another thing that you added to the show. Originally, Stuart, when we had the scene all boarded with Stuart destroying the factory with him there all by himself, like he accidentally trips over that lever, and it sends everything flying. But I felt like it just wasn't. It was just kind of it was kind of strange that it was happening with nobody there. Like it didn't have a lot of energy to it. And so you had this idea to reprise the 110% and make it a whole everybody's working to finish thing, which I think works terrific. And I love this song just as much as I loved it the first time.
Play it again. Let's do it a third time over the
No,
credits.
we only need this one twice. But I just love this kind of hustle ending with these huge explosions. And the whole animation studio did a great job destroying the factory. It's the kind of thing like when you're doing animation for someone, you get a script like this, you go, okay, yeah, this isn't too hard. We can go. And then you get to the entire factory explodes.
Hey, did I just notice Larry's tooth was missing in certain
no, you
shots? Okay.
We're going to edit that out because it won't be missing in front.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Oh, good. Sorry.
Or maybe we won't edit it, but you'll just know.
One of those things that we fixed ex post facto.
Yeah.
Jobs. Hello, Stuart.
Yeah, so I love how this works with
Mind me dropping
kind
in
of
unannounced, but just
Morty
stop by to check out the-
suggesting that they were going to, that he was going to sell him the factory, and then that upsets all the workers who feel like they've worked so hard for
I guess
him.
this means you'll
It's a
have
good
to
scene.
sell me the factory now, huh, Green Machine?
You were gonna sell?
That guy, I forget the character name, but that's my friend Tori Martin, who's a great comedian and actor, and I was able to get him to come in and do some voices for us. I really had to twist his arm. He's like, oh, I don't know, VeggieTales. Nobody watches those anymore. Actually, I'm kidding. He was very excited.
That reminds me of the museum of the Field Museum in Chicago. Was that, or Soldier Field even?
Well, it definitely was inspired by Soldier Field,
Mm-hmm.
which probably is architecturally similar to the Field Museum.
Yep.
Instead, I've ruined everything.
Since
Both
that was-
being named
Nice
Field
luck
and
at
all.
football.
Wonder if that has anything to do in both cases with Marshall Field. I'm not sure.
I think
know that the
Soldier
field- the
Field
field-
may be that it was actually a field.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Field Museum was Marshall Field, though.
Was it?
Yes, I'm pretty
Which
sure.
doesn't exist
Because you
anymore.
usually don't make a museum about fields, because that'd be kind of boring.
Well, it used to be a field,
yeah,
or
for a
an
museum
island or something.
Yeah, and then it'd be the field parking lot and the field high rise.
Check it out. Stuart Green. What if
That was
Express?
strangely reminiscent of
What's
Wizard
the
of
What If
Oz right there.
Yes. And this is strangely reminiscent of the Polar Express, without the Tom Hanks animatronic.
Football.
Yikes. So the train, the What If Express, I was so excited about when we decided to do a show with a train, because I've been trying to get a train into VeggieTales for years. Like going all the way back to Mo and the Big Exit. I really wanted to have a train in that.
That'd have been a good.
But it never fit into the story enough to make it worth the expense of making a train.
Right.
You know, because that's a fairly big investment budget.
Yes.
So, love the train.
Absolutely.
So, hey, the silly song. Who wrote and directed the silly song there?
Oh yeah, I did the silly song. So I just kind of thought it'd be fun to do a silly song starring Junior. Of course, Larry's done a bunch. Mr. Lunt's done a bunch.
Has Junior ever starred in one? Because he was in Cebu, and he was in obviously The Boys in the Sink
and Hairbrush. Yeah, but this is his first
yeah.
starring role. In fact, this is an all Lisa Vischer silly song too, because
sure
she's
is.
the voice of the mom too. She's got a great singing voice. You can tell with Mom there, but also with Junior.
This is actually the first time we've seen Junior's bedroom too since Wonderful World of Autotainment. And in that,
Yeah.
it was only like a wall and a bed.
In a bed. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we had never had his full bedroom in Maya. You know, those of you who've been following these for a while will remember the Big Idea used one kind of software up through Larry Boy and the Rumor Weed, and then we changed to a new kind of software. And when we did that for King George and the Ducky, we've used that ever since.
Right.
So anything before King George and the Ducky, we can't use anymore.
Right.
So, so we had to basically design a new bedroom for Junior.
Yeah, but this was obviously inspired by my own experience as a parent, and both of my kids are and continue to be like this, where you know they'll keep asking for more and more stuffed animals, and my daughter in particular would just be buried in animals by the time I left her
And is
room.
it? I mean, it's really not about the animals, right? It's about the attention, don't you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, she loved her little stuffed animals. I mean, she's 12 now, and she still sleeps with a bunch of stuffed animals. She'll just line them up.
But she doesn't make you get them.
Right, she doesn't make me get them anymore. And then my son, like, he has this big bear. We just got him out of the washer. His name's Chestnut. He's a bear that weighs about 40 pounds. he was getting really bad. We had to throw him in the washer. Took about 3 days to dry. But yeah, it's just this whole idea of this opera that goes on, you know, this interaction between parent and child as they're going to bed, and just thought it'd be a fun little operetta. And then taking that idea to Kurt, you know, I wrote the first version of the song and took it to Kurt, and we worked it into this. Just this real fun opera, and then recording Lisa singing it was a blast, because it was pretty difficult song to sing, and she really nailed it. So
Did it take
it was
a
a
while?
lot of fun. Yeah, it took a little time. It took a little time, but it was really fun to do.
on the
goes
beautiful
the train.
train.
So this is kind of like the Wild 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 West too. You kind of get that. Remember that show was that Robert Conrad?
No.
No. Well, Will Smith did a movie version of it. I'm trying to remember the original TV version.
How is it like that?
Well, it's like the. Yeah, oh, you know what got me thinking about that? You were talking about mowing the big exit, putting a train and mowing the big exit,
Yes.
and that's like this techno train world, you know. Anyway,
You know,
so
they
this
really
is
did
less-
have trains in the Old West book.
Yes, they did. They had trains, but it was more of a technological thing.
This is just a regular train, though.
Just a regular train.
And
Yeah. So I just got off on a straight tangent, strange tangent.
yes, you did.
It was in my hand all along.
Huh? How'd you do that?
I'll tell you, Stuart. I've been driving this train for 100 years, and I still don't know how it does anything. Sit anywhere you like, but buckle up. It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
I told you I can't leave. Hey!
I told you to buckle up.
Where are we going?
Wherever it is you are running to.
Hey, so there's Gabe.
Running away?
Let's talk about Gabe. He's a
Well-
new character. So, so then we said, well, is there anybody in the cast we could use, you know, so we don't have to come up with a new character? And I mean, the closest would have been George, Grandpa George. But I felt like I love Grandpa George. You know, we used him for the narrator in Big River Rescue. He was perfect for that because he was very detached.
Yep.
You know, and he doesn't have eyes. So I felt like he just wouldn't work in this role because this role really had to be very compassionate and kind of, you know, gently lead Stuart through this journey in ultimately a very gentle but firm way.
Was that bird the one from Sweet Pea Beauty, by the way?
I don't remember. I'm
We had a
not
little
sure.
bird flying around. Okay, just a little side note
So I didn't want to use George because I felt like it just wouldn't work without eyes because he needed to be a compassionate character. And so Gabe ended up being kind of a cross between George and Charlie Pincher.
there. Yes.
But he was originally going to be a piece of corn, and it got textured as corn, and I saw it, and I was like, yeah, that's not going to work.
I remember
And
seeing that.
so, like,
That
very,
was
very
freaky.
late in production, I said, okay, you know what? Make him a crookneck squash. So that's what he is.
Those
He's a
are very,
crookneck squash.
very tasty. They're good in stew.
They are. And what's interesting, after I decided to make it squash, I actually realized his shape actually works better as squash.
Uh-huh.
And because I'm growing squash in my garden this year for the first time.
Are you?
And what's interesting, Gabe actually makes a really good squash because his foot is like the vine where the squash attaches to the vine.
Yes.
But then his hair, which was supposed to be corn silk, actually looks like the flower that's on top of squash when you pick them off the plant. Because squash, you know, the squash fruit grows between the vine and a flower.
Okay.
And so they end up with a flower on top of them. Which, by the
Gotcha.
way, did you know that cucumbers are pokey? when you pick them, like when they're on the vine, when you pick them off the vine, I never knew this because I'm also growing cucumbers this year.
Yes.
They're like spiny, and you have to wipe the spines off. And so usually when you just do it when you pick it because they just come off real easy.
Yes.
But I like because I'd never grown them before. I never knew they had prickly spines on them. That was like kind of a revelation.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And I did, but I was briefly distracted by the Statue of Liberty on Larry's 4-foot tongue.
I can see how you could be distracted by that. It's a fake tongue. It's not his real tongue.
Oh, that's good.
Sneak up on me like
Yeah.
that.
I wasn't sneaking.
That was another fun little song by Mark Steele.
What's
Yeah.
going on? Why am I right
I love
here
this little
and
jingles.
over there? I told you.
So this is a big moment for Stuart. He sees himself as this, what we call famous Stuart, who got everything that Stuart thought he wanted.
Certainly what you could.
And he's still miserable. That was a fine line, even once we got to editorial, you know, after the script was finished, of, you know, how much we wanted to say about
Get some real food.
why he's unhappy, and you know, we didn't want to make that big a deal out of, oh, all rich people are miserable.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, in fact, all throughout this show, there's lots of fine lines we walked.
Well, it wasn't really
Like-
about it because he's the same. He's as discontent, you know, in his life here as he is in his rich life.
Right, exactly.
And so,
But
and
it
the
was a
other line,
delicate balance.
and the delicate balance. The other line too was just not wanting him to be too frustrated and estranged from his family. You know, he obviously loves his wife and his kids, and you know,
You mean at the beginning? when
yeah,
you
at the
see-
beginning, yeah. So you know, we didn't want to make him too much, you know, too depressed and ready to get away from it all. But so that was another.
Yeah, that was a
fine
that was a
line.
big change we made. Because originally he got the ticket and then he went to the train station, and then chased the train down as it was leaving.
Right.
And it just felt like, golly, that guy's running away.
Right.
And so we pulled that back to, hey, what if the train just shows up in the stadium and he just kind of accidentally gets on?
Right. And make
It made it
not
feel
make
less
it
like he
so
was running
intentional.
away. You know, another fine balance that we had to work on was not saying that Larry's life now is meaningless, that Famous Stewart's life is meaningless because he's not married and doesn't have kids, and
Yeah.
and you know, regular Stewart's life has meaning because he's married and has kids.
Right.
Yeah, like I even toyed with, like, well, what if Petunia in this next scene coming up here, what if Petunia's like married to somebody else in that scene?
Yeah.
You know, or
And I'm really rich and
you know, because what we didn't want to say is, oh, well, if you know, single people
Right.
aren't
right.
complete until they're married, like,
Right.
you know. But ultimately, the way that it is now is what kind of felt the truest to these characters. And
Well, just the whole idea of, you know,
story.
God has a plan for each individual, and you know, and it's about living that plan and being content in it, you know, regardless of your situation, which is a cool thing.
here's our Back to the Future scene.
where are we?
Remember that in Back to the Future?
Yep.
Was it Back to the Future 2, I think,
Yeah.
when they went back in time. Wait, that was, I mean, Back to the Future, they went forward in time, but at some point,
No, they went back in
but
time.
when was the version when they came back to town and it was all like, I guess that was the future one. In the future,
Yeah.
because Biff had taken over,
Right.
the
yeah.
town was all run down, and
Right. Yeah.
you know, all sorts of seedy elements had taken over.
Right,
So
right.
Stewart's gumdrop teeth is our version of seedy elements. So we have to be careful about what kind of seeds we use in VeggieTales.
This is looking a little bit like Breckenridge, this little town with ski slopes there. This little Victorian set with tall hills.
Poor Petunia, she's an old maid.
Oh boy, it's the football team.
So there's Gordon got one line in this show.
I don't have any.
The bully from Bully Trouble. He wasn't supposed to ever have any dialogue, but they accidentally animated the Gord saying the line that the P was supposed to say, and it was just a whole lot cheaper and easier to record the voice of the Gord than it was
Right.
to reanimate
Well,
the whole
especially-
shot.
Especially since that's you.
Exactly. So I'm like, oh, don't make me say
Don't
a
make me do that.
line. Don't make me say.
Oh, I want to just point out what a great job Alan Lee did with the voice of the
Yeah,
conductor.
so
we started
back to
talking about
Gabe. We did an
talking about
audition
Gabe.
process, and after we couldn't use Steven, we auditioned a series of fantastic people who all gave great auditions.
Here she should be
Um,
alive.
But Alan's kind of just a real go-to guy for us because he's got a great range, and just in this case with Gabe, just really, I think, captured the heart of this character. You know, not making him too judgmental, but making him just this gentle, caring guide.
Right, and his voice just is authentically older too.
Yes.
You know, he doesn't have to try to fake that. So
Right.
it really works out well.
This scene was another one that we really pulled back on
Yeah.
to change. It started out really traumatic, where Emma practically gets kicked out of the orphanage by the woman who runs it, and it was this long, protracted scene where she gets kicked out and then ends up in the in the cold and
Yeah.
clutching her bear as the snow swirls around her, and we just kept pulling it back and cutting and cutting and cutting
Yeah.
until we ended up with just and then at one point, even when she was inside the orphanage, she was going to sing a whole verse from the song, and I think it was you actually that was pushing me
What choice? I'll do anything.
to like, she doesn't need to sing the whole song, just have her sing the doo-doos.
Yeah, doo-doo-doo.
And I was resistant to that at first, but ultimately, that's just, that scene is extremely simple and short,
Yes.
but man, it still busts me up. But it feels authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than manipulative, because it was the other way it was going towards
just-
very manipulative and
Yeah.
very like, we're gonna make you cry.
Whether you want to or not. I like the kind of the ice pack on the snow. That's nice.
The sparkles.
Yes. It's snowed, gotten warm, and frozen over again.
It's a glacier.
Yes.
Glacier. So yeah, so Gabe turned out terrific. Emma turned out great. It's very challenging to put new characters into our world, and I get really stressed out every time I have to work on a new character.
It's a lot of pressure. Yeah, it's just an unknown quantity, you know.
It really is.
And a lot of times you don't know like how if you're going to carry a character forward into new shows because you just don't know how they work out and if they fit in, But some work out better than others. I mean, there's obviously Madame Blueberry and Paw Grape. I mean, yeah, pretty much every character besides Bob, Larry, and Junior, were introduced for specific story points and then just hung out in the cast after that.
Yay, Stuart made the right choice. I was hoping he would. So the train, back to that, I actually got to design that myself. I was kind of selfish and kept it.
The train?
Yeah.
This train that you've been trying to introduce for years?
Right, the train I've been trying to introduce for years rather than letting Joe Spataford do it. We haven't talked about Joe and what a great job he did on this show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which, of course, he did a fantastic job. Yep, lots of beautiful locations. But yeah, so the train I did myself just because I wanted to.
Take a look out the window. The view might just take your
This shot was one of my biggest sources of stress the whole production, because I just was always concerned that it just wasn't going to do what it needed to emotionally. And even when we were doing the sound, the music and the sound effects, we didn't have anything in there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, just make it a big flourishy kind of thing. And so in the end, I ended up just doing it myself. And I love it because I'm amazing. I do everything. Remember this? We recorded this little do here on your birthday.
Yeah, on my birthday.
On the last day of the mix.
Yeah, I remember we came in. I was going to come in to listen to the silly song.
And I was like,
and
by the way...
my wife and kids were taking me to Buca de Beppo.
I said, by the way, I need you to record one little part.
But I'm going to Buca de Beppo. So, but it didn't take very long.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. I ate way too much anyway. I didn't need any more time there.
The whistle. There's a lot of whistles in the show. Have you noticed that? There's coaches' whistles and conductors' whistles and work whistles and train whistles.
It's almost a theme.
It's not a visual theme. It's an audio theme.
Oh, Stuart,
Here's the whole
isn't it
town.
wonderful? I told everyone that you refused
is
to
wonderful.
sell the factory, and they
Some
all
of the worst
came
hops in
out
veggie history.
the whole town. What's going on?
Well, it's cold in that factory.
I don't want to stand on the floor too long.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Stuart's back. Might as well make this a party.
The magically appearing Christmas tree. Where'd that come from?
He threw the switch. I saw him.
Did it pop out of the ground?
So now that factory, is that based off any other veggie factories in the past?
It's not based off of it. It is the factory from Easter Carol. But we added some things to it. We took out some things and added some things. So, I mean, basically the walls, ceiling, and floor are the same.
Yeah.
Every day,
The
Emma.
rest is new.
Every single day.
Poor Art back there. Like forgotten child.
Hello, Art. Hey, Art.
Hey, what you doing back there, little guy?
Mike Wazowski.
Mike Wazowski.
You tell Teddy that our lives are special because we have each other. That's God's plan.
Emma's little curls are so cute.
Yeah, they were tough, man. It took a while to get those just right.
Nobody would ever help me.
At one point, Emma was supposed to be pink. I wanted her to be pink, but I lost that fight.
Yeah, it's just, it was too... Well, I guess rhubarbs can be kind of red-ish. Yeah. Sort of went out of the vegetable kingdom color world.
I love this little joke here that
You know,
I just had this strangest train ride. That as Stuart was on the What If Express, Morty was too. That's a nice little wrap around there.
Very Twilight Zone-ish.
Merry Christmas, Gabe.
Good job.
Kurt did a great job on all the music there too.
Yes, good
I feel
job,
like I
Kurt.
always say this.
Good job, everybody.
Wow,
so,
Larry,
you
that
know,
was great.
Thanks, Bob.
What's been interesting for me on this show was that it's been a really surprisingly personal kind of story for me.
Would you like to lay down as you talk about this, Brian?
You know, like,
Oh, cool.
oh, you haven't seen that?
Oh, I haven't seen these little.
As I'm trying to be all personal and deep and
Sorry.
meaningful.
I just couldn't go there. I was looking at
oh,
the
pretty pictures, colors.
Oh, you did all those? That's very
No,
nice.
Hawaii did this.
Oh, Hawaii did. Oh,
T-Dan
okay. T-Dan.
and his
Okay.
crew.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, go
So
back. Surprisingly
what's been
personal.
surprising for me is that, you know, I mean, I work at Big Idea, obviously. You know, and VeggieTales is kind of this big. I don't want to say it's a machine, but it's much. The films I make here are much bigger than my directorial vision. You know, because they're part of marketing plans and all these other things. But this story is just really personal for me, because I'm kind of the opposite of Stuart in a way, and yet I struggle with all those same demons that he does about feeling that what I do is not that what I do for work is meaningful, but just that life in general is meaningful. You know, it's one of, you know, we all have our different things that we struggle with, and this is definitely one of my big demons in my life. So it's and then, like, my dad actually owns a factory, and he wants me to come run the factory. You know, and like for me, directing VeggieTales is the equivalent of having caught that football. Like if I weren't doing this, there would be nothing else I would rather do than come do this. And yet there's still days that I go home, you know, frustrated and angry, and you know, like, these are issues that I think everybody deals with at some point in their life.
Oh, absolutely.
But certainly for me, they're really core. And it's been a good process for me.
That's cool.
Going through this show.
That's cool. Hey, these are really well. The song, first off, with
Yay, the
Stephen
song.
Curtis Chapman. I mean, just, you know, it just those right, like Nicole Nordeman, who wrote a song for Sweet Beauty for us. I mean, just to be able to give a script to an artist who's so talented, who just so gets the message, that can turn it around into
Like
such
Matthew
a
did
beautiful.
on Give This Christmas Away.
Yeah, Matthew did the same thing on Give This Christmas Away.
Matthew
and-
West.
Yeah, and so, but Stephen just did such a wonderful job on this song.
He did. We actually made the credits a little bit longer than we usually do, just to get more of the song in, so we didn't have to chop it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as usual, Ron Eddy helped out with the credits, doing the designs, and then I was able to animate them. That was fun.
Yep.
Thanks, Ron. But yeah, Stephen just kind of took the script, and, you know, he hadn't even seen the show, and was able to turn it into this great lyric about you know, how God created us for a reason.
Yep.
And he's directed every step we've ever taken.
You sound like the conductor.
I know.
All right. It's Brain Freeze Entertainment, who's Todd Carter.
Job.
Yep. Very good. All these things in here.
And big thanks to Mark Steele and to you, Mike, for writing such a great show.
Oh, thanks, Brian. It was a real pleasure, and working with Mark has been, and you in development has just been really a pleasure over the past couple of years. So it's a fun team to be a part of. Absolutely. And
It's very meaningful and wonderful.
Is our buddies in Hawaii? Hey, Remy.
Aloha.
Aloha. T-Dan.
Mahalo.
T-Dan. I like T-Dan's an awesome dude.
We had shrimp at a shrimp wagon when I was out there.
Sweet. Justin. Yeah, these are all really good folks.
Yeah, this was, you know, I will say, production-wise and pre-production-wise, this has been a difficult show, I think, all the way through, and a lot of people have given up a lot and worked really hard to get it to where it is. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just thrilled with the final result, and thankful to all of those people who have, you know, put their own lives on the line for getting this finished.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Big thanks to Chris Wall, who was our editor on this, and also is doing the DVD production. Just big help at every point. And here's all Mark and Mike's wonderful songs.
Oh, bumblebee,
So,
oh, bumblebee.
it's a good show. We hope you all enjoyed it.
Oh, do we still have the... How long does the thing go on?
Just another 15 seconds or so.
Okay. Because we kind of have to keep talking, right? That's the thing about these commentaries. You got to kind of go all the way to the end.
Hey, hey,
Let's
hey,
see.
hey, hey.
Try to think of one other thing to say here. What about
I like Christmas.
Christmas is nice. Christmas is great.
Although
But this is,
really
this is a
Christmas
type of show that you could watch other times.
Or
than just
purchase
Christmas.
other times than just Christmas. You don't just have to buy it at Christmas.
That's right.
And it,
There you
it
go.
makes a great Easter gift because Easter is a good time to think about how life is meaningful.
Yes, except for we have an Easter show coming out too.
Okay,
so.
not last year. You should have bought it for Easter, not this year.
That's right.
Or maybe it'll be in a 2-pack. We'll just throw some eggs in.
Zach's gonna have to do some editing. I can tell right now.
No, we can leave that in.
Oh,
All
there
right,
goes Bob.
thanks everybody.
Thanks for coming.